You're launching your policy on immigration or migration at the moment. For year after year after year, I've had Conservative foreign secretaries, home secretaries, and leaders tell me that you were going to get immigration down to the tens of thousands, and you never got anywhere close to it. Why should we believe you now?
Well, look, I agree we've got to restore public confidence in our immigration system and our approach. And I say this as the son of a refugee. Immigration can bring huge benefits to this country. We want to see the entrepreneurs come in with the ability to create the jobs of the future. We want to be able to plug holes in the labour market, for example, our fast-track NHS visa. But we also think fairness is important, which is why when people come here, they should pay the NHS surcharge of £625, so we cover the cost of the NHS, and we think people should be here for 5 years before they can claim benefits. And you contrast that with the offer from Labour of open-door immigration, not just from Europe, from the rest of the world, which would double the overall level of immigration. And I think that is a very clear choice for voters.
At the moment, it's 226,000 net. The Prime Minister has said it's going to come down. A lot of people voted for Brexit because they wanted it to come down. By how much will it come down?
Well, so we're not going to fix on an arbitrary target.
The problem is that if you don't fix on any kind of targets, we have no way of judging whether your policy has been a failure or a success.
No, that's wrong. Because actually what we'll do is make sure that the government and Parliament has got control over immigration. So we get the advantages, the benefits, and the way I described, the innovators coming here, creating the jobs. But also,
so how do we judge if the control is being used properly?
And we also control the costs and the pressures that immigration, if it's uncontrolled, undoubtedly places. And through parliamentary accountability, we can make sure that by exercising a points-based system, we've got control year by year. And I think that's the way you bring down immigration, but you do it responsibly in a way which gets the advantages but also controls the cost. You don't.
So if immigration comes down by one person, if in 5 years' time net immigration is 226,000 minus one, is that a success?
Well, not on its own, but what you'll want to know, and actually what people will want to know, is it's not just the volume, which, yes, we're committed to bringing down, but it's also the kind of immigration you've got coming into the country. We want people coming here who want to contribute, whether it's to our economy, whether it's to our public services, but we've got to control the cost. The one thing.
Okay, well, let me ask you about that then. What are the groups of people, what are the groups of workers you don't want more of or you want fewer of in this country?
Well, it's not about stigmatising.
It's not, but it doesn't make any kind of sense at the moment. Because if you talk to business, if you talk to the National Farmers Union or people running care homes or whatever it is, they all want more workers coming in, including, quotes, unskilled workers. So I'm just wondering, in which areas you don't want more workers coming into this economy?
So certainly we want to make sure that the best and the brightest can come here to contribute to the innovation and creating the jobs of the future for people of this country. We want to be able to plug gaps in specific sectors, whether it's in the NHS or whether it's elsewhere. But what you don't want to do is encourage over-reliance on cheap labour from abroad, which has a depressing effect on wages in this country. And actually, the way to deal with that for those sectors that are concerned is to invest in innovation, to drive up the productivity of those sectors, rather than just engage in this rather artificial reliance on cheap labour from abroad. And that's better for this country, both businesses, but also workers.
At the moment, we're at maximum employment in this country. You know, there is a labour shortage in lots of areas. If you want to build more homes, if you want more infrastructure, as Boris Johnson keeps saying, you're going to need more people to build them. We're all getting older. Care homes need more workers. The NFU says you need 77 more agricultural workers, relatively lowly paid in this economy to keep things going. I just don't see who you're going to keep out if you're going to keep the economy moving forward.
We'll make sure that we've got the approach that gets the skills we need. But take both of those examples. For example, I was housing minister. Actually, the nature of the housing market has changed with modular methods of construction. There are innovative ways that don't rely on the same volume of cheap labour from abroad, which boost the housing industry, and also, frankly, for workers in this country, change the nature of what it's like to work in the construction industry, from working on sites in the cold through thick and thin to working in factories and with greater career progression. That's the kind of innovative approach which I think is good for the economy, good for workers, and stops some of the uncontrolled costs of immigration, which Labour have said with their open door approach to immigration, whether it's Europe or the rest of the world, they would do nothing about.
That's not quite their policy.
It is,
they have not said they're open to the rest of the world. They have not.
They at various points have said they would extend free movement, but not just to Europe. You should put that point to Jeremy Corbyn.
That is the conference decision. We'll talk to Jeremy Corbyn about whether the Clause 5 meeting has agreed that later on.
But very specifically. Very specifically.
You're the Foreign Secretary. I will ask the question of the Labour
Party. No, sure. But he has said time and time again he will respect those Labour Party conference resolutions. And we've had this meeting over the weekend where he said he's not going to be honest with the public about this. That's not fair.
let's wait and see. One of the ways that you have talked about restricting immigration in the past is by looking at salary thresholds.
Yes.
But if you look at something, I keep mentioning the care industry for good reasons. The starting salary for a care worker is £12,000 to £16,000 in this country, way below the government threshold of £30,000. Are you going to keep a salary threshold as part of your immigration figure or not?
So I do think it's important that we have a salary threshold, but we're going to take the advice from the Migration Advisory Council so we get it right for exactly the reasons that you suggest. But basically what this is about is getting the benefits of immigration but controlling the cost, because of course when workers come in that aren't earning more than a certain amount, it puts extra pressure on public services and housing, and those are things which I think people rightly think, as a matter of fairness, we need to have some checks and some controls over.
So no target in the manifesto and no specific threshold in the manifesto either.
And the transition to a points-based Australian-style approach to immigration, which has been tried and tested, means you've got far more granular control over, as I said, the skills that we want to come in, but also the pressures that it puts on our society and our public services.
It's very complicated, and you aren't allowing us to judge it very easily, are you?
We are. We've set our proposals out, and we will continue to do so in our manifesto in far more detail than the Labour Party, which, as I said, if we had open door immigration, would lead to doubling of the amount of immigration to this country. And I think a lot of people just think that's unfair.
Let's move to the biggest single slogan from your party throughout this election. We're already getting weary of it. Get Brexit done. We're going to get Brexit done. And that means getting a free trade agreement by the end of next year. And the good news for the government is that Phil Hogan, who's the EU Commissioner that you'll be negotiating with if you win the election, has said, yes, you can get an agreement within a year, but you have to agree to an absolute free playing field on regulations, level playing field on regulations and everything else. Will you do that?
Well, actually, first of all, you're right. We've absolutely committed to getting Brexit done. All of our candidates are committed to doing
getting
that.
Brexit, yes.
Yeah, no, but well, it's important because people see 100 Labour candidates have said that they'll campaign for Remain, so their position is split. So people can have that confidence. And in terms of getting a free trade deal, we've got the heads of terms, if you like, through the political declaration. It's very clear we're going to transition to a best-in-class free trade agreement. And as you said, the EU Trade Commissioner is confident we can get it done.
But he said you have to agree to a level playing field, will you?
Well, actually, the political declaration, which sets out the future relationship, is very clear. We're not going to have a race to the bottom in this country, but we'll have control over our regulations. We want to be world leaders on environment, on social policy, but we will control
I'm not sure if that's yes or no, but let's move on.
Well, level playing field, in fairness, level playing field requirements can go from the bare minimums, the global standards, which are fairly vanilla, right the way through to high alignment with all the EU rules, from all the legislative rules from the EU. We're not going to align ourselves to EU rules. Coming out of the
well,
EU
that's a no then.
well, it means that elected politicians like me are accountable to your viewers for all those important things.
So the reason I'm talking about this is I suspect this is going to be a more difficult and possibly lengthier negotiation than the government are currently saying. Let me take one issue in particular, which has been very, very much talked about, including by the Prime Minister, which is fishing.
Yes.
Now, after you've done this deal, which you want to finish on fishing by July next year, are foreign trawlers going to get good access to British waters or not?
Well, you say good access. We'll be
big access to British waters. Lots of access to British waters.
We'll be an independent coastal state with full control over our fisheries. This is why we say to
But will we be allowing in lots of foreign trawlers or not?
This is why we say to the SNP, don't give up, sacrifice the rights of Scottish fishermen to the EU, and we'll engage in a negotiation about quotas.
Will there be less access than now for foreign trawlers?
Will there be absolutely the optimal access for the UK, whether it's
you can't even say less.
Well, that will be a subject to negotiation, but we'll have total control over it rather than being subject to EU rules, and that's the difference. We'll have control.
The reason this is not going to be an easy negotiation for Britain is that this issue is tied to the rest of the access that we're looking for. The two things are part of the same negotiation, so it's going to be quite difficult for us to get everything we want on fishing because it's tied to everything else.
But of course, there's lots of things the EU want from us, whether it's geographic indicators, the huge amount of manufacturing done for this country. But because we've got the political declaration and the future relationship, and we set out in quite a lot of detail, the EU and the UK, the basic principles, actually putting meat on the bones, if you like, fleshing out that detail, will be reasonably straightforward. And it's not just me saying it, as you've cited, it's the EU's Trade Commissioner who agrees it's doable. We're going to get it done.
Here's what you have agreed in the political declaration with the EU on this. It says, within the context of the overall economic partnership linked to everything else, the parties should establish a new fisheries agreement on access to water and quota shares. That's a very specific linking of the two things. When one of your colleagues first saw those words, because they're very similar to what Theresa May negotiated, he flipped his lid and he resigned. Let's remind ourselves what this colleague said. There we go. And it finishes off by saying, our European friends will not desist until they have worked out a way to plunder the waters of Scotland for their fish. He was furious about it. Can you explain to people how the thing that he was furious about differs in any way from what you have negotiated under Boris Johnson in the free trade agreement?
Well, absolutely, because under the previous set of arrangements, which you're right were unsatisfactory, the EU would have had a control over our fisheries. Under this arrangement, in a negotiation,
it is word for word the same, Mr. Raab. It is word for word the same.
We will be an independent coastal state, and we'll engage in that negotiation with the EU. As of course, we've got fishermen and women who and a sector who want access to other European waters as well. But that will be a bilateral, even negotiation, and we'll do so as an independent coastal state. What happens around the rest of the world, by the way?
If you can't get what you want on fishing when you negotiate next year, what happens? Do we leave without a deal at the end of the year?
Well, it's going to be a negotiation. Of course, there's going to be compromises on all sides.
So you might compromise on fishing?
No. We're going to be an independent coastal state, but we'll take the best interests of the UK on board. We're not going to be locked in to a set of EU rules which are targeted and tailored towards the best interests of the Europeans. And actually, it'll be a compromise. But the real truth about the political declaration, I think Phil Hogan made this clear as well. We've got the divorce, the separation issues done. We can now turn the page and work on the positive relationship we want with our European friends and allies. And actually, the free trade agreement is win-win. You're portraying it as somehow a seesaw.
It's a negotiation, and one side gives and one side takes. It happens all the way through.
Actually, there's an opportunity for win-win here. A deal which is great for the UK, but is also good for our European friends. That's what we're aiming for.
We are sitting here in the middle of an election campaign. Lots of marginal constituencies, coastal seats up and down the country, fishermen and their families looking very, very carefully. And they're hearing you say that it's going to be compromised. If we don't get what we want on fishing, what happens? Do we leave without a deal?
Well, I'm not going to be able to break down in advance the hypothetical negotiating scenarios. The guarantee I can give is we'll be an independent coastal state, we'll have full control over it, and we'll do what's in the best interest of fishermen and women up and down the country.
Could we leave without a deal?
I think it's no, it's not. It's not what we're going to do.
No, I don't. Okay, all right, that's clear.
I don't think it's remotely likely now. Unless, of course,
let's move on to another subject then, which you'll have seen the story.